you, everyone. So we are going to get to item number 4, and it was just brought to my attention by a member of the public that there are some planning commissions and some city council meetings where the order is the report first, then public comment, then commissioners' questions after that. So I'd like to do it that way going forward. So, and see how that works out for the next couple of items. So for item 4, I'm going to have a report from the general manager, and then we will go into public comment and then commissioners' comments. Okay? So, Mr. Grinnell, please.
Okay.
Item number 4, administration office lease, exercise of option to extend lease.
Good. I'll be brief, Mr. President. As you will recall, at the last board meeting, the commission requested further information from staff regarding possible alternatives to remaining in the existing premises for the admin office, and that information was to be brought back to the commission. We have done so in this report. Several alternatives were investigated. They are identified in the staff memo. I would like to bring to your attention, there's a typographical error on page 2 of 52. Top of the page, it says Harbor Village, 965 square feet at $2.50 per square foot. The 250 is incorrect. The correct amount is $1 a square foot, which you will find in information later on in the back of the behind the staff recommendation. Moving ahead, again, we have these several alternatives. What you will see is that some are more expensive. Also, for those that actually appear to be less costly, the amount of available space is simply too inadequate. It's too small. It won't work for what we need. And so you have that information before you. Staff's recommendation is, again, to exercise the option to extend at the existing premises.
Thank you, Mr. Grinnell.
And let me just remind the board, on page 3, the new extension includes another option to extend. I recall at the last meeting's discussion, there was a question of length of time that the district's new building that is planned would not be ready for several years, and there was a question about then what. Well, you should be aware that this option to extend includes another 3-year extension if you were to choose to exercise it.
Can I ask for a point of clarification about the report?
Thank you. Can we do that after the public comment?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we'll
sure.
just we'll have the report, we'll have public comment, and then we'll have commissioners' questions. So if you could just remember that for the commissioners' questions. Let's do public comment, and there are, I believe, 9 here. First one, it's going to be Mr. Warren, Mr. Ullum, Ms. Lorenas. So.
Good evening, Mr. President. I possibly believe that I submitted speaker slip first on this item. I just took a somewhat fast look at the staff report, and it's just mind-boggling. There's so many problems with the staff report. Basically, you have staff, a general manager who wants to stay in his palatial office with an ocean view, and he'll make up anything, any excuse, any justification to try and stay there. And it's not appropriate to be paying for palatial offices at public expense. The dollars per square foot comparison, which occupies a good chunk of the staff report, is an almost irrelevant measure. The only thing that really should be relevant is what your total cost to the district would be the bottom line dollar figure. And you know, who cares what the square footage is? You got twice the square footage you need, so yeah, you're getting it at a low rate, but you're still paying through the nose for the office space. And if you want to see how much office space is appropriate, go look at Granada Sanitary, go look at Coastside County Water, go look at Montero Water and Sanitary. All of them have a fraction of the office space per person that your staff has. What is it that's special about this district? Well, you have a majority of the board that's incompetent and in bed with the general manager. That's what's different about this district. You don't need offices that lock. What's appropriate is you have locking file cabinets. The saying that you need to have file security in each office, that's just a ruse to justify having big offices for each staff. Granada Sanitary District has basically an 8x8 cubicle for each of the 2 staff members, 4 square feet. And the file cabinets occupy the bulk of the approximately 700 square foot of office space. So, you know, how you can justify 5 times the office space in conference rooms. Of course, the other half of our space is the meeting room, but that's not staff space. The moving costs I find just absolutely astounding. Since I've been on the Granada board, we've moved twice. Both times on a weekend, both times for a low enough cost that I don't remember what the cost was. It was some mid-range 4-digit number, probably a few $1,000s. Local mover and the minimal staff did most of the work. So what's really going on here, I can summarize real easily. It's the old saw about when you look at the staff report, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS, and that's what the staff report is. And you need to get cheaper offices. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
You gotta stop sending him up in front of me, stealing all my good lines. But, yeah, I filed a PRA, asked for the invoices that would prove those moving expenses. We reported something like $47,000. And then somebody bumped that estimate up to $60,000 for inflation. So I asked for the invoices that would justify that. And in response I got, and it made sense, per your retention policy, document retention policy, those invoices have been destroyed. They're gone. So then my next question was this, well, where did the $47,000 number come from? Because it was quoted, well, $47,000. So I got a list back to me, Mr. Grinnell, got it, I think I got it today. No, it's just today. And the list only totals to $44,000. I'm rounding up, I always round up. But what's interesting is what's on this list. $4,000 for computer equipment. $10,000 for computer equipment. $1,400, $1,700, $375, all for computer equipment. That's not a moving expense. We got Eagle Communications for phones. We got 2 invoices, one for $3,428. That sounds an awful lot like a PBX. And we got one for $1,181. That could be attributed to the move. Somebody had to hook up the phones. We got furniture on that move that's part of that move expense. We got a $4,000 deposit that must exist somewhere. We got furniture for $8,300. We got an assembly and install for $5,087. I'll count that as a moving expense for $5,000. Kind of a high thing for putting together furniture. Must have been a really nice furniture. I got an IKEA table for $97, a coffee table and a sofa for $650. Then I get to the movers. $235 to move the copier, and NorCal, who you've all heard of, $2,230. So we were told $47,000. I get a list for $44,000. Looks to me like $30,000 of it can't be attributed to a moving expense. Unless you intend to buy new furniture. and have someone deliver it and put it together for you, I don't see how you can consider that a moving expense. The reason this is, I don't know, disturbing is because I think you guys didn't know that. I think you were under the impression that your decision, part of it was going to be based on the fact that it would cost, that it did cost $47,000 to do the move, and it was going to cost us $60,000 to do the next move. I think you're being given bad information by Mr. Grinnell. I think Mr. Grinnell's telling you what he wants you to hear. And this is kind of examples of kind of the PR requests and replies that I get. I'll go real quick. This is just a typed up list. This was done off the top of somebody's head. I don't know if anybody actually looked up anything. There's no check numbers on here. There's nothing to verify any of this. It looks like I could have done this off the top of my head. And the last thing I want to point out about this is this PR request was filed at the same time I asked for a few other things. One of them was for the paperwork, any kind of documentation about your current audit that you've hired your own people to do. Now, apparently this is a big mess because this person's been working on it for a while. I thought it was only $38,000 check to the $7 million organization. That should go away. But I asked for the documentation for the audit and was told absolutely no documentation for the audit. I don't believe that. You don't do audits without having paperwork written down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ullum. Ms. Lorenas?
I'm a little confused because I thought one of the goals of the commissioners here was at some point to bring the administrative office to Pillar Point with some grandiose idea of building a big building. So at some point you are going to still incur these moving costs in the future. So to me that's a moot point bringing that up because you're going to be coming here, you're planning on coming here at some point anyway. But also it's hard for me to believe with all the empty office space on the coast that there is nothing around here that is workable. And also, you know, you have a great opportunity to create some jobs here on the coast, which we all know that we need. So I really don't understand how you've come back to the old thought of going ahead and approving this extension for another 3 years and another 3 years. And so I'm going to ask you all to please maybe scrutinize the report a little closer and think a little bit more about what the future is of where you want your office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Matoush?
I feel bad coming up here to talk to you about relocation of office expense. It sounds like it's been discussed before. Here I am, my first night here. In my prior occupation, I did a lot of medical facilities, leases, medical offices. I worked in hospitals. I set up laboratories and different facilities necessary for medical care. I would urge you to look at these leases and to negotiate with people, work with them on tenant improvement, things that I'm sure that is self-evident. When I see KN Properties proposing to do a lease with you, I would remind you heartily, look at your fuel dock and who runs that, the amount of repair, and what is not being done by one of your tenants with regard to the fuel dock. Why did we have harbor personnel doing repairs on the fuel dock that the tenant himself was responsible for? So be very careful with dealing with that person. But I'd like to see things local and the lowest cost. You know, I think you can have grandiose offices locally without spending a lot of money, and some of these things don't seem to fit that bill. But I wish you the greatest of success in finding offices that will satisfy all the needs here and somewhat mitigate the wishes of the public.
Thank you. Mr. Dave Warden?
Thank you. My name is Dave Warden. My company is Windward Commercial Real Estate Services. I've been in commercial real estate brokerage for more than 35 years at this point, well over 2,000 closed transactions. I live and have my office in Half Moon Bay, but I work all over the state and frequently out of state. I had sent to the board information regarding space that I have available over right across the highway in the Harbor Vista building. Up until May 1st, the tenant in that building was GoPro, the sport camera people. They occupied the entire second floor. That is now available. You have the square footages. I sent them to you. I have additional copies here. This is a modern building, ADA compliant, in excellent condition, very well maintained. It is move-in ready. No tenant improvements would be necessary for you. I suggest that you continue this item to a date and time certain over at the Harbor Vista building so that everyone on the board and members of the public can come and look at the space and see what is available right across the highway. Has, by the way, a lovely view of Surfers Beach and Pillar Point Harbor. Would also mention, and that space is currently available for lease, would also mention that the property is being offered for sale. It might be a wise move to acquire that building rather than to go through the brain damage of trying to build a new building here in the harbor, for the Harbor District. I would suggest also, by the way, that after you've looked at the property, if the decision is still to extend over Oyster Point as a commercial real estate broker who is not representing the Harbor District, but if I did, I'd recommend that you go back to the landlord and tell them, we will agree to exercise our option, provided you break it up into 3 one-year options. That's the trade-off we want. That way you're not locked into 3 years. Okay, you still got the same deal, but you're not locked into 3 years. Just tell them that's the condition that we want in order to extend our lease. One last item I'd like to mention is that in this space that I'm talking about, there's a very nice conference room with a very large table that stretches from me to Mr. Holsinger. It's got very comfortable chairs, whiteboards on the wall. I'm pretty doggone sure I can get the property owner to allow me to let the Harbor District use that for your mediation session, free of charge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thanks for your consideration.
And, Mr. Warden, there's a question from Commissioner Thomas.
Just heard from a previous speaker who I believe occupies space in that very building.
Yes.
Second floor.
Yes.
He maintains they have 700 square feet. What's the difference in size between the second floor and the third floor that you would have us go to?
They're in the third floor.
They are in the, GSD is in the third floor?
Is in the third floor. I'll leave this with you. Here's the spreadsheet of all of the spaces currently available. It also shows the spreadsheet, it also shows the space that's occupied by GSD. So
Thank you.
it's all there. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks for, and thank you for your consideration. Would love to have you folks come over. As I suggested, I think you should continue the item to a date and time certain over at the Harbor District.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. There's another question from Commissioner
Oh, yes,
Thomas.
please.
One quick question.
Sure.
I'm familiar with the space on the third floor because I have been to meetings,
Right.
GSD meetings. Is the space on the second floor larger than the space on the third floor? Square footage wise?
It's pretty much the same. You have the floor plans, because I emailed them to you.
Yeah.
As I say, I have other copies here that I can leave.
But
I think it's pretty much the same.
GSD doesn't use the whole third floor, correct?
No, there's one small office that GSD does not occupy. The second floor plan is different in that there are actually 3 office suites and a central hallway. So you could take 1, 2, or all 3.
Got it.
But you could very easily, I think you have 7 employees, you could very comfortably accommodate them plus meeting space on the second floor.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Can I give you a
We
real
have-
quick clarification on the square footage usage? My perspective?
I'd like to, just for the sake of time, because we have hard stuff at 10, I'd like to get to the next 5 four public speakers. We have Ms. Ketchum, Ms. Cartwright, Ms. Webster, and Mr. Rosas. So, Ms. Lisa Ketchum, please.
Lisa Ketchum, Lost Beach. I'd like to read from the minutes of the Harbor Commission from May 19, 2004, on the relocation of District Admin Office to Oyster Point Marina. Quote, Grinnell reiterated the direction of the board to state this is a temporary move, up to 5 years. And during that time, staff will pursue permanent office space back on the coast for which rent payments would not be required. Grinnell stated the district would buy or build a building to fit their needs. Grinnell stated land trade options or occupying existing buildings on the coast is also an option. Motion carried 3-2. The maximum of 5 years of rented office space has now become 10 years, and we're no closer to a district-owned facility. Over the last 15 years, a lot of time and money has been spent on consultants, planning and permitting for Harbor District building projects with nothing to show for it. The common theme seems to be the plans are out of scale, inappropriate for the zoning, or construction costs turn out to be too expensive. I urge you to focus your priority on filling the need for district-owned office space on the coast and not jeopardize or complicate that goal with a larger multi-purpose building for which there are no confirmed tenants and which would take up precious space at the harbor and be more controversial. A visitor center could always be built later. Please find a home now for the immediate needs of district staff. Please reconsider your El Granada parcel for this purpose. Look at the new building going up at Main Street and 92 in Half Moon Bay for an example of how smooth the process can be when proposed development is appropriate for the site and the zoning. Of course, this building that's for sale now would fit this thing, but basically that's mine. And here's, if this helps for minutes, this is my statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Cartwright?
I just wanted to say that one of the things that I noticed in the proposal is that Mr. Grinnell, at the last meeting, he didn't seem to know at all the difference between classes A, B, and C. And in the current proposal, doesn't seem to progress any further. And quoting from the article, or the opinion piece here, I suppose, or just to read from it, last week commissioners traded at least one email over whether to move administrative offices out of their current cavernous space in South San Francisco. That email from attorney and appointed Commissioner Will Holsinger is an attempt at an electronic backroom deal. You can read it for yourself attached to the online version of this editorial. In that email, which was forwarded to the review, he clearly advocates a position, and that is a clear violation of the state's Brown Act, which demands such muscle be applied in public, regardless of whether it was their intent to conduct this crucial and potentially costly business out of public purview. Seasoned elected officials and their counsel surely know better, and it's hard to believe this was the first offense, because it's not. In addition, on at least one occasion in recent weeks, one commissioner called another who suggested calling a third about financial irregularities in the office. That is called a serial meeting, and it is expressly outlawed in the Brown Act. Just because it's the first time you got caught, doesn't mean it's the first time it happened. It just means that we're catching on to you. And it's a real concern because you, the attorney, you know better than this, and we expect better than this. And maybe that's why you're not getting elected, only appointed. But it's a real concern. And so if you had these issues that you wanted to have brought up regarding the new space that we're talking about today, you should have waited till today or brought them up last time. I also wanted to say that all these moving costs, these $47,000, which obviously aren't justified, which John did a great job of pointing out, if you guys still want to spend the $47,000, I think it's a bad choice. If you want to cut that in half, hey, we will all get together, we will help move you guys, and you can pay us. How many of us are willing to help them move? I mean, seriously, you guys are in charge of all this money, and you have to spend it in a responsible way. And it shouldn't take Public Records Act requests from us to point out to you how poorly he decides to spend your money. I mean, that's really, again, shame on you. And I also wanted to point out that earlier in the agenda for tonight, Mr. Grinnell clearly states that in order to start meetings early, a formal resolution needs to be adopted, which means that you guys ending early 2 weeks ago was, well, simply put, BS. And so maybe you guys should look at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Leslie Webster.
It's amazing to me how much time is spent on protocol and how little on helping your constituents, such as the fishermen. Everyone else has talked about other issues about the move. What I want to talk about is Peter Grinnell's memo of September 26th, which I found intriguing. His concerns about the inevitable serious disruption of district business are not valid reasons for extending the lease. In a previous life, I facilitated office moves for various companies. Yes, life is messy. Moving sucks. People deal with it all the time. In this case, I urge you to consider relocating the Harbor District Administrative Office, and I urge you to consider relocating it from South San Francisco to the coast side. There are several appropriate spaces. The commercial fishermen who need more attention are coast side, and the majority of the issues appear to be at Pillar Point. There is no real reason to remain at Oyster Point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph Rosas, last speaker on item number 4 before we go to the commissioners.
Okay, this is going to be a lot faster than I expected because most of the people before me said a lot of the numbers and actual evidence to why this is bad, to say the least. But I will say that I agree with a section in the report. A few anecdotal evidence to space needs without supporting documentation or clear applicability to the district's particular needs is an insufficient basis for determining a major operational change and expenditure. I agree. Just like there is no record as to the cost of the move or how the cost was determined, as previously stated, I'm pretty sure we could safely say there is no record or any actual process to determining how much space you actually need. Other than the picture submitted trying to prove that that much space is required, all it does is prove that there is the inability to use file cabinets. Therefore, proving the need to have locking offices. Sure, I would also agree with the economy of scale proven by the lower cost of square footage in the larger space. But, you know, it's why I shop at Costco. But I will also have difficulty proving why I need a 50-gallon drum of deodorant. Of course, it'd be fun to swim in, but I don't need 50 years worth of deodorant. So, in closing, just listen to mommy and clean your room.
Thank you. Commissioners.
Mr. President, for purposes of discussion, I'd like to offer a motion
Yes.
so that we may discuss the pros and cons.
Okay.
I would move to approve the extension of the District Administrative Office lease at 400 Oyster Point Marina Plaza, South San Francisco for 3 years, and authorize the general manager to exercise the option to extend the lease in accordance with the terms of the lease, and further instruct the general manager to explore the possibility of doing 3 one-year options with the agency. I would so move.
Second. Okay. I hear a motion and a second. So now it's time for discussion. Commissioners.
Well, I don't see any new information here from what we had last time that says that we definitely have someplace different and better to move to now. I'm concerned about a quote-unquote bum's rush or making choices and decisions by inaction, by simply not exercising the option and then being faced with needing to rush to find something else. That being said, long-term, I think that the district's offices, administrative offices, should be on the coast side. That's our home, that's where we belong, that's where we have our start. So we need to be moving in that direction. I like the idea of looking at breaking up the 3-year term into 1-year periods of time, and I heartily endorse that, because that allows us to make small steps as we continue to look in a more orderly, responsible fashion for suitable space on the coast side, whether interim or long-term. I hope we have a permanent home here that is on district property, whether that's district property that we currently have or might acquire in some future time. I don't know. I just know that it's going to take a little more time than we have between now and the deadline to exercise the option of October 14th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I was one of those, although I didn't do any form of serial or spoke collection of memos. I sent the general manager a list of things that I wanted to see in the future home for the administration staff. I didn't send anyone else a copy. I'm sorry for that. I also looked at some properties and spoke to the manager about his due diligence. I've always been in favor of extending it, but I thought with the wisdom of the commission voting 3-2 not to extend it, we should do a little more due diligence. And I think staff has, and I know I have, and I've come to the same conclusion. I don't see any sense not to take the exercise of the option where we currently exist. And we've heard comments tonight about talk of years past about trying to get a place of our own here. And Lord knows we've tried that, and we've come closer now than ever before. We're at the point where we're beginning to look at hiring some individuals to bring that plan to fruition. But it's a long process, and if it's anything less than 5 years, I'll be surprised. But I do like the 3 one-year options that was brought to our attention this evening from a realtor. And that's pretty much my comments on the issue, Mr. President.
Thank you. Commissioner Parvano?
Yes, I'd like to bring back, I'm sorry, I'd like to point out that since the last meeting, we had asked staff to inquire about other opportunities, other possibilities of relocating the offices. And as I understand it, the staff has provided us with, I think, 8 new possibilities. And we have heard tonight, I think, a 9th from Mr. Warden on the Harbor Vista site. So the reason why I voted no the last time was because I felt like I wanted to give staff a little bit more time in order to provide us with more other opportunities and possibilities of relocation. And I think that with an additional 9 sites that staff has spent time in reviewing, inspecting, and doing an evaluation, that the presentation by Mr. Warden tonight does offer us a path and a direction toward minimizing our dependency on staying at 400 Oyster Point Boulevard for 3 years. And it does hopefully present us with an opportunity to look at other options that Mr. Warden has mentioned in his presentation. So I would, I think what has changed tonight is the fact that we have made the proposal by staff to stay at 400 Oyster Point for 3 years. It has been broken down into 3 one-year segments, which allows a little bit more movement. It's a little more liquid in terms of being able to look at other options as they become available. And I know that looking at this county, the growth pattern in this county is growing. There's a lot more need for office space than the county currently provides. So I think that looking at minimizing the rushness and the disruption into what Commissioner Tucker has proposed in terms of looking at this in one-year segments is appealing. And I appreciate Mr. Warden coming forth with his proposal and suggestion.
Thank you. Commissioner Brennan?
Yeah, so again, I just want to, I'm a little confused by why we're voting on this exact same thing over again when we just voted on it at the last meeting. I have some concerns about that, but I'm gonna keep moving. It appears that there are numerous other options available as far as space availability throughout the county and certainly on the coast side. And our investments as a district are predominantly at Pillar Point Harbor. We own the land there. We do not own the land at Oyster Point Marina. And it's my understanding that the city of South San Francisco, and Robert, you probably know a lot more about this than I do, would love to see that whole area redeveloped into a wonderful waterfront. Because of the recession, that hasn't happened. There were some pretty big plans that were, put on hold. And I think that I would imagine, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, that the city leaders are still very much hoping to move forward with redeveloping, or let's just say developing the waterfront area in South San Francisco and making it a really great place to be. There are a lot of businesses there, and now we've got the ferry terminal, and my understanding is the big picture plan is that the Harbor District, if the Harbor District were to continue, which seems to be up in the air at Oyster Point, if they were to continue on there, we would probably be relegated to just operating the slips and not any land-based operations. So that's a pretty minimal situation as compared to Pillar Point Harbor, where we actually own land. We have commercial fishing, so there's a lot of economic viability happening. There are just a lot of reasons why it makes sense for our administrators to be close to our primary investment. I think that it would be a different situation if we had management closer to Pillar Point Harbor, and I think that it would alleviate some of the tension and some of the disconnection between the business interests and the commercial fishing interests and let's just say staff recommendations. So I think it would be a very good thing for the district to have the management not be so removed from the primary assets of the Harbor District. I also don't think that we've really taken a serious look at our options, meaning that we haven't physically gone and looked as a group at any other property locations. I know I certainly would be more than willing to do that and welcome that opportunity to check out what's available. I'm somewhat familiar with what's available on the coast side, but I certainly would, I liked the idea of an invitation to come over and visit a property. I think that would show a real seriousness on the part of the board to investigate options, which we have not done yet. Let me keep going here. I had a point of clarification earlier, which was at the last meeting, we talked about going month to month. And it wasn't communicated in the staff report that possibility had even been addressed with our property manager. I don't know if it has been or not, but it seems to me, given that we've been a tenant for 10 years and that they have a lot of vacancy in their building, that going month to month would certainly be an option that I would want to explore. And I think it would be prudent, fiscally prudent, to look into that even before looking at going to one-year options, which I think is also better than a 3-year agreement. So I would really like to see the staff have a meeting with our property manager or a letter or however the process needs to work, I don't know, to seriously investigate going month to month, because I think that given what a great tenant we've been for 10 years, that the property manager would want to see us stay a little bit longer, and that would give us the flexibility to look for something and find the ideal location without having a lot of pressure to move by a certain date. So to me, that would seem to be the best solution. As far as the end of May 2014 goes, I mean, that's a ways off. We're talking about 7 months from now. So it's not as if we're making a decision about moving, you know, in 2 months or something like that. We have quite a lot of time to, you know, find a place. And the other thing I'd remind the board is, if we were looking today at property, and I think it's a good idea to see what's on the market, but if we were looking today at property, what's available May 2014 or June, because that's really when we would be moving, is moving in June 1st. Maybe we'd want to move a month early, I don't know. We're not even close enough to that date to really have all of our options in front of us, because it's so far out that we don't even know for sure exactly what's going to be available in June 1st, 2014. So I'm just pointing out that it's a process, and unless you start the process, nothing's happening. And it feels like from the comments that I've heard tonight that the board is not really serious about starting the process of investigating our options, and that would mean going to look at property, you know, getting a lot more information than what's been supplied in this report. So those are some of my concerns. I have a few other things. In the report, I'm a little confused on a couple points, because it says, all right, let me just backtrack here. So I checked into this situation with our lease because I wanted to know what was up with it a while back. So I emailed Peter Grinnell back in April of 2013, and Marietta Harris responded and explained to me that our monthly base rent is $7,350 plus an additional $1.01 for operating expenses, and that's a total of $7,351, and that was for square footage of 3,675 square feet. But then in the staff report, it says something different. And then today I got an email from General Manager Grinnell stating that we have 3,675 square feet, but we're actually paying $2.10 per square foot. To me, all right, first of all, I should say that doesn't match what's in the staff report, because in the staff report, it says here on page 2 that the district's present month rent is $2.01 a square foot. So I'm wondering if that's a typo. That's a question. So there seems to be either a typo or some miscommunication about what it is that we are actually paying today. It appears that we're not paying $2.01, we're actually paying $2.10. And we have a very large office for, according to Marietta Harris, 6 employees and 1 IT person that comes in sporadically. Now, I don't know if that's changed since her email, but that's not even 7 full-time employees. That's just 6 employees, and I don't even think they're all full-time. Some of them are part-time.
We don't have any part-time.
Okay, so 6 full-time?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got 6 full-time employees and 3,675 square feet of space. That's pretty outrageous. I mean, that's like, and we don't even have meeting space there. We're here because we don't have meeting space there. I mean, that's like crazy that we have that much space. I'm just concerned, to me, it doesn't make sense. So we have an opportunity to reduce our square footage. Obviously, we want to be reasonable about making sure our employees have enough space. I'm not suggesting that they be, you know, crammed or anything like that. But at the same time, this square footage for 6 employees it just doesn't add up. It's not fiscally sound, and, you know, I think that we need to take that very seriously, and I'm afraid that we might not be. So there's some confusion here about our price per square foot, which I've noted. It's my understanding that we're now being told that the square footage price is going to go down by 1 cent per square foot if we remain. But then if you do the math on that square footage with the price per square foot, the math doesn't work. Okay, so there's some problems with the math here on the square footage and the price per square foot. So there is a problem with this report and with the costs that we're being given. And I think that should be corrected because it's very confusing here. And I brought that to our staff's attention. So those are some of my concerns. There was an email sent from General Manager Grinnell to the commissioners, sent to the full board, requesting, let's see what it was called here, guidance. It says extension of administrative office lease, possible relocation of administrative office, Harbor Commission direction guidance to staff regarding alternative space requirements. I think Commissioner Tucker already referenced that. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it lists off, let's see, 1 through 14 questions where he asks for guidance. And, you know, some of these things, I just found these questions to be a little odd. And to me, it seemed like our general manager really should have been consulting with an agent to answer these questions, not ask the commissioners, because these were questions that mainly related to what square footage is appropriate and were really agent type questions. So I'm a little concerned about the way that went. I did respond with answers to the questions. Of course, I could not forward my answers to the full board because that would have been a Brown Act violation, so I did not do that. But I did provide them to the general manager as requested. And I felt a little awkward about that because it felt kind of not transparent to have that sort of dialogue not at a meeting. And maybe that was fine, I don't know. But I kind of feel like I need to, you know, go over it in public.
Sure, Commissioner Brennan, you've taken up approximately 20 minutes, and so I'm just wondering how much more time do you plan to take up for your report? I'm just doing a time check.
Okay, well, I think I can make it quick, so
Okay.
I'll try to speed through it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I want
so-
to make sure that every commissioner has sort of equal amounts of time to speak, and then I have something to say, and I'll take up probably 2 minutes.
You want to go before me?
No.
Okay.
The chair should go last, so please.
Okay, so the first question was about how much total space staff should have for administrative needs, yada, yada, yada. And I just did some internet searching, you know, I'm no expert at this, and what seemed to be the standard, and you probably know more about this than I do, Robert, but it seems to be that 144 square feet per employee is the standard square footage, which multiple sources pointed me to. Reception area would be about 100 square feet, plus 10 square feet per person waiting. We don't have a big backup of people waiting in our reception area, at least not that I've ever seen. Conference room is 50 square feet plus 25 square foot per person. Lunch break room is 75 square feet plus 25 square feet per person seated. Storage room for server and hard drives would be 200 square feet, yada, 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 on and on. So that was just my research, but again, why am I doing this? I mean, it seems like this really is a discussion for an agent. Then there was a question about, you know, how to provide office space for the employees, and there was some insistence, or apparent insistence, that they need locking big offices with locked doors. And, you know, that may have been the case back in the olden days, but these days people work in a different type of environment, and they use, you know, it's usually more open office space, and they use, so they can work collaboratively, that's the whole idea, and they use locking file cabinets, and they use safes to protect sensitive information. Obviously, much of our information is online now, which can be protected too if you're using the cloud, or if it's just digital files, then there are ways of protecting that information, which I'm sure our staff already knows about. So I just wanted to mention that. As far as private meetings are concerned, because I know that we have to interview employees and that sort of thing, conference rooms are typically used for that these days, not private offices. And I'm not suggesting there shouldn't be any private offices, I'm just suggesting an alternative to that where it's appropriate. So it's not always necessary to have a closing door or a locked door to an office for every employee. Management, or even top management necessarily. And then management staff offices, well, I'll just leave that at that. So the size of the conference room should accommodate the management team. It doesn't need to accommodate the entire staff. So I just, wanted to clarify that based on question number 4. The question number 5, which, sorry I can't read you guys the questions, but I'm trying to go fast here. The district has been located at Oyster Point Admin Office for 10 years. The move to 400 Oyster Point was approved by the board as a temporary location. During the past 10 years, hard copy files could have been scanned and digitally archived. So at this point, if we were moving by May 31st, 2014, there's kind of no excuse for us not to have our information digitized. I know it's a lot of work to do it and it costs money to do it, but it's something that we really need to do, because part of why we're getting so hung up on Public Records Act requests is that none of our information, well, no, I won't say none, some of our information is not available digitally, and so staff has to spend all this extra time doing that when we could have been doing that all along. I'm almost done. We don't need, Commissioner Tucker, sometimes you make comments like...
Commissioner, you've spent 25 minutes and very seldom have you discussed the idea of the motion that's on the floor. You have a tendency to read memos and to read emails into the record for the 3rd and 4th time. We all received copies of the questions. Some of us responded, some of us didn't. You're not being fair to the process.
I treated you with respect when it was your
Please,
turn. I just asked for the same respect.
I'm going to have Commissioner Brennan wrap it up.
Okay. So there was a question about how proximity to the ocean or the bay front, and I just wanted to say that ocean views are great, but I don't think it's necessary, and that there was also the question of whether it be a standalone building or within a larger structure, and I don't think it matters either way, whatever makes the most sense. But again, back to the crux of this whole thing, which is that staff apparently didn't contact their agent, and I specifically asked to have the agent or agents that represent the district appear at this meeting to speak to us, and that was not provided. And so I just feel like we haven't really taken this item as seriously as we might have, and given how much we're spending on this space every month and the large scale of it, considering that we only have 6 employees there, it should be taken seriously, and we do have time to take it seriously because we don't have our lease up until May 2014. So, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would like to just make some final comments, and then we will continue with this item and finish up this item. So, to Commissioner Brennan's point, I am not a commercial real estate expert, and no, I don't know the answers to those questions, Commissioner Brennan. I rely upon staff to give me good reports, strong reports, informed reports, and also from consultants who have information, from the public who has information, to the commercial real estate experts out there who have the information. I rely upon those people so that I can make informed decisions. Having said that, eventually we do want to come back to the coast side. I mean, and clearly from old reports that I'm hearing from historical documents, we do. And I would love to do it as soon as possible. However, absent a clear solution, which I don't feel like I have one tonight. I honestly, personally don't feel like I have a clear solution of where we're going to actually be on the coast side. I'm leaning towards the item where we will extend the lease on a, I'm fine with either month to month or year by year, whatever, until we really wrap ourselves around a clear solution. And it sounds like we're starting the conversation, and I think that's good, but we need to speed up this conversation because we do have until May, and I don't know when the holidays come, how long this is going to take. Again, I'm not a real estate expert. This could take a year, I don't know. So, but right now, absent a clear solution in my mind, I'm not ready to move anywhere. But I do like the idea of giving ourselves options so that we're not locked into 3-year leases or these long-term leases. And then with regards to just staff moving and things, I work for a government agency, and I know that moving is very disruptive. I'm not even going to put myself in the shoes of staff because it's all relative. I mean, what's a big office for me may be a tiny office for you. I don't know. I keep my stuff in my office, just for the record. My office at work, I don't like, everyone in my office has locks. I don't, just because I feel like I have nothing to hide, so I don't have locks. You could go in my office anytime. I keep valuable things in my bedroom, so I don't take it to the office. But anyway, that was supposed to be a joke. So anyway, but really, my office is not locked. And I always tell people we're not the FBI. We don't have things that we hide here. So anyway, back to the point. Really, I would love us to come to the coast side as soon as possible. I don't feel confident that we're there yet, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree. So can we at least have a temporary solution by extending this lease either month to month, year by year, whatever it is, and I'd like to, for my colleagues to move this item.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to change it from a 1-year, my understanding was the motion was to make it a 1-year agreement versus a 3-year agreement. Instead of doing that, change it to month to month.
If it's possible.
If it's possible, yes. And then if it's not, we can go to Plan B.
Which is year to year.
Which would be year to year.
That friendly amendment, would you be
friendly amendment?
Would you be open to that amendment, to your motion?
No.
No.
And I don't accept the amendment. And I'll, again, so that there's no misunderstanding, read my motion again into the record so that it's clear. And then I'm going to call for the question because we've all had an opportunity to discuss it, some of us more so than others. I would move to approve the extension of the district's administrative office lease at 400 Oyster Point Marina Plaza, South San Francisco, for 3 years, and authorize the general manager to exercise the option to extend the lease in accordance with the terms of the lease. And also ask the general manager to work with the administration and the realtors to see if we can get a 1-year option.
Okay. Wait, I don't understand that part. What, the part at the end, what does that mean?
That means he's to go to the salespeople, the real estate people at the building, and see if he can secure 3 1-year lease options.
So we would be voting to approve a 3-year lease, but that could change if he had a positive conversation with the property manager, then it would suddenly become a 1-year versus a 3-year?
That's correct.
Because that conversation still has to happen between the general manager and the real estate.
I really think that conversation should happen before we vote on this.
I'm going to call for the question. We've been over this and over this, Mr. Moon.
Okay, the question has been called, so I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Was there a second?
There was a second.
Okay, I'm sorry, and that second was made by Ms. Cooper. Do you recall in your notes?
Commissioner
Holsinger. I'm sorry, Commissioner Holsinger was seconded. So, okay, let's have a roll call on this, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Pieravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Okay, so passes. Thank you. We are now at item number 5, so we will have the report, and then we'll have public comment, and then commissioner's comments. That's the order that we'll take it in. So item 5, can I please have Mr. Grindy?
So we'll get to that page. Yes, you have my report here as far as the recommendation. in general, what this is to replace the sewer line underneath the Johnson Pier. I have been working with both the head building inspector for the county and with the fire marshal. They would approve also the aspect of using a normal product under the pier, a metallic type with metal pipe, going to a more of a plastic type, so it's easier to service if a boat hits it or something, and it also is more durable and long lasting and is more chemical resistant for anything that's put down the pipe.
And that concludes your report.
Unless I have any questions.
Thank you. You may after public comment, but we're going to have public comment now, and then we'll have commissioners' questions and comments. So in order, it will be Ms. Nicole David, Ms. Sean Cartwright, and Mr. Leonard Warren.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nicole David. I'm a marine biologist living in Half Bay, and my focus area as a marine biologist is water quality, and I'm concerned about fecal bacteria in Pillow Point Harbor. The sanitary sewer line underneath Johnson Pier appears to be severely corroded and has already been patched in numerous places. So that constitutes a higher risk for leaks and the possibility of human waste being discharged and contaminating Pillow Point Harbor water. Sewage contaminated water is a great concern for any human that will come in contact with the water. That includes fishermen, that includes recreational boaters, people just enjoying recreational activities in and on the water, and children playing at the beach. Sewage contaminated water also poses a great concern for seafood consumption and potentially a high risk for the fishing industry, especially with the crab season coming up, during which harbor water is actually used for and circulated through the crab holding tanks. So should that water become contaminated with fecal bacteria through a leak in those pipes, it would be at a high price for the fishermen. So I would like to encourage you to be proactive and replace the old corroded pipes as soon as possible so we can keep the water quality in the harbor as good as possible. I'm very familiar with the study that UC Davis conducted at Pillow Point Harbor where they carried out microbial soil tracking. The results of that study were based on only 2 samples that were actually collected in the inner harbor. So they should really be considered inconclusive, even though they suggest that there was no detection of the human marker in those samples. But it is a way too small sample size, and the results are really, the sample size is really insufficient to accept the results as a true negative. And if there would be leaks in the pipes, it would definitely deteriorate the water quality in the harbor. It would cause an increased concentration in fecal bacteria, putting wildlife and humans at an elevated risk. So I wanted to thank Mr. Grindy for bringing this issue to the attention of the Harbor Commission, and thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you. We have Ms. Cartwright.
I wanted to thank you for doing the different order where we get to hear the report and then speak. I think that's a great way to go. At least we have more of an idea. Instead of saying, hey, you should do this, and then the report is, we're doing that, you're like, oh, never mind. I appreciate that. Again, I wanted to say, great work to Scott and Sabrina, because I know they've been trying to get this here for a long time. And I wanted to say, obviously, this is a big concern. Well, maybe not of all of you, but if somebody was taken ill from eating, fish that came out of the water, or if they were out there boating and somebody was taken ill, particularly a child, in these several months that they've been trying to get this on there, it'd be on your guys' head, because you guys are the ones that have been punting this issue for a long time. And if it had happened in the past 2 weeks, it would solely be on Commissioner Tucker and Holsinger's head, because they're the ones with their little shenanigans last time to end the meeting, just because they didn't want to play anymore. So I just wanted to make that really clear. This issue was definitely going to be brought up last time. And I think these are the things you need to consider before you do your shenanigans. And had somebody gotten sick in that meantime, and it could be traced back to this, I would be all over the news saying, your fault, and making sure that somebody knew exactly who was responsible. Because when you play these games, and you just want to sit there and target people, and silence them, and silence us, and silence another commissioner, you're playing, in this case, you're playing with people's lives. You need to think about that instead of thinking about your own self and your stupidity.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard Warren?
Good evening, commissioners. This time, I will point out for the record that I've been on the Granada Sanitary District Board of Directors for 16 years. I know what I'm talking about, and I find it unconscionable that this has been delayed. Whether it's not clear from the staff report we just heard whether it's leaking intermittently. It sounds like it's leaking intermittently and then it gets patched. And so Nicole David made the comments about the small sample size and you can't track it back. But if it's leaking and then gets patched and then it's tested when it's not leaking, then you're not going to see the problem. But the problem is still there at the time it's leaking. And this needs to be considered an absolute urgency item to be fixed yesterday. And the other thing that I'm appalled about is you have a known continuously leaking sewer line under the building over inside the harbor where the restaurants are, and you're just dawdling, dragging your feet, putting that out, and it's time, I'm not going to do it, but it's time for somebody in the public to go call county health and tell them that the harbor district has a leaking sewer line that they're not fixing. And the reason that I'm really concerned about that is it's probably contaminating the groundwater there. The groundwater table, for those of you who don't know, which is probably 3 of you because you don't care, the groundwater table in Princeton is basically at ground level. And so any leak there is going to be contaminating the groundwater. And that's probably seeping into the harbor. You got all kinds of problems. And for you to leave that one going months and months and months and months because it might be inconvenient is just ridiculous. And as far as the pipe goes, metal pipe for sewer lines is passé. It's done with HDPE now. We even have pressure mains with huge pressures in them that are like 1-inch HDPE. And it's easy to install. It's cheaper than steel and lasts a lot longer. But you need to consider both of those an urgency item. Oh, and the original reason that I submitted the speaker slip in the first place, I almost forgot this, is you almost certainly need a permit from the sanitary district to work on sewer main. And you don't want to try doing that without a permit. So you better check with staff at the sanitary district and see if you need a permit to work on that sewer main.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment portion. So commissioners?
I believe a motion is in order.
Yes, Mr. Holsinger.
I would move to authorize the general manager to issue a public bid solicitation notice for replacement of the main sanitary sewer line under the Johnson Pier, its adjacent lateral lines, connecting fittings and other sewer lines at the Johnson Pier.
I'll second.
Thank you. I hear a motion in a second. Any discussion?
I have some when it's my turn.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead?
So this issue first came to my attention in July, and so I contacted our harbor master and asked if I could take a tour underneath the pier and have a look because a member of the public was concerned, and that didn't go too smoothly. But eventually I was able to have a tour, which was great, with a couple of our harbor patrol guys, and it was actually kind of fun. So we met at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we boarded a floating dock, and we floated ourselves around underneath the pier all the way to the fish buying building. So we did pretty much the whole thing. And coincidentally, there actually was a worker under there while we were there who was doing some repairs to some, I think it was, Scott could correct me, I don't know if it was electrical or what he was at.
There was a couple different things.
There were a couple things going on, yeah. So there was somebody working under there, but he wasn't working on the sewer line. And so I noticed that there were some patches here and there, and asked about that, and the staff told me that they do those repairs themselves. And because I asked if a plumber comes out and does it or who would do that, and they said, oh, we do it when there's a leak. And I know those guys are super busy, so there's no way that they're under there monitoring 24/7 on whether we're springing a leak in our sewer pipe. I think that it is clearly very important that we be proactive on this, and we want to protect the public, we want to protect the fishing industry. Also we want to protect the district, and I believe that this is getting into, a potential Clean Water Act violation, which is a serious situation, and there are fines involved. And so, I've been consistently asking about this situation with the sewer pipes at pretty much every single board meeting since that tour that I took. And I'm just really happy to see it on the agenda tonight. And I had planned on asking to put it on the agenda at the last board meeting. Obviously, that meeting was cut short, so I wasn't able to do that. But coincidentally, here it is, so great timing. And I'm very pleased to see that that the staff supports doing this. I do have a couple questions about some things in the staff report. So there's a cost estimate here between $40,000 and $70,000. And last time when we had an estimate for something at Pillar Point Harbor that was like a capital improvement, there were some costs not included, like permit fees and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if this is like a wild guess, or if this is.
Mr. President, I would make a point of order, please. Yes. That's not part of the motion, that's part of the report. The motion is here to be discussed, rather than what might happen once we get a response to our request for proposals. Yeah. We're asking for bids, we're not setting out specifications for what they can do or not do.
Understood. On that point of order, though, I will allow Commissioner Brennan to ask a few questions to Mr. Grindy, because in order for her to make her decision on the vote, I just want to make sure that she has the answers to her questions. And Commissioner Brennan, how many questions do you have to ask?
I'm almost done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grindy, please answer.
Sure. The range is geared because of the different types of pipe. What we have is we have a base bid of one type of pipe and alternates in the bid once we move forward, if this is approved. So in other words, you put your lowest price pipe that's legally established for the base price, and you work up from there. And our hope would be that we would get a good bid and we would be able to put the best pipe out there.
And thank you for that. So we don't know about permits, though.
Permits would be normally included with the project through the contractor taking out the permits.
So I just would like to voice my support, and that I think this should be fast-tracked. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, and I have none because I want to fast-track this too. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Carolina?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Yes.
Can I make a comment?
Yes?
I just wanted to say one thing, is that there is no leaks, but just to take one step back in my comment here, is that, over the years, what's happened with any pipe that might be under a pier anywhere is that things get underneath there from float, something that comes up, an old log or whatever, may get up underneath there at a high tide or a storm, which does cause breaks. And that's common in any harbor. And so the reason the staff do the repairs is because it's that urgent. If it's something where we see a problem where it's a custom fit or custom cut, then we bring contractors in.
Thank you for that clarification. We are at item 6, bills and claims, Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. President, members of the board, as your treasurer, I reviewed the bills and claims and recommended and make a motion to approve the payment of the claim to the amount of $311,826.42.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I hear a motion. Do I, or
I'll
actually,
second it.
Was that, that was, I assume that was a motion. I hear a motion and a second. Any questions, comments?
I have a question when it's my turn.
Okay. Commissioner Brennan and Commissioner Olson.
So I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up or if I should bring it up during our finance director's item, so please tell me. But I know I've asked for this before. You know, I feel like, you know, it's great to see this information here, but it's very vague. And you know, from what I've seen from what other boards look at meetings, we should have more information such as, you know, actuals versus budget, statements, financial reports on capital projects, and current balance sheets. And we're not being provided with any of that in our board packets. And I think it's really hard to approve spending money on projects when we're not looking at that information. And I think we need to improve our transparency in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. While I agree that yes, that should have been made. That comment should be made under the CFO's report, the finance director's report, because it is related. I mean, all the finances are related. They're interrelated. It is appropriate to also bring it up. So,
There was just
yes.
one last thing. I noticed here there was a cost for Southwest Construction capital project, $188,898.52. Is that for the restroom project, or?
Sorry. That is the Oyster Point restroom project, and it's one of the payments for that total project.
So it's not the total cost for the project?
No, we had 3 restrooms to do.
Okay, I just wondered what that
No, they go on a prorated payment basis as they complete, or they submit bills, complete work, they submit a bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Holsinger.
Yes. I would like, please, to request clarification and an audit, potentially, depending upon what we have, for the legal services bill from Aronson, Dickerson, Cone, and Lanzone on one specific item. It was brought to my attention that there was an item in August relating, that begins a time reference of something over approximately 5.5 hours, beginning with a reference to email with Holsinger, Commissioner Holsinger, suggesting that somehow I was responsible for 5.5 hours of legal services with Aronson, Dickerson, Cone, and Lanzone on something that it appears perhaps that I might have initiated. I went back and looked at my email records and saw that there was an inquiry that I didn't initiate, that I was not part of a colloquy that I had engaged in with legal counsel, about responding to a records request from, I believe it was Mr. Ullum or somebody. And I went back and I looked at that email to me. It was 1 or 2 sentences. And in my own legal practice, I might charge a minimum increment of 1/10 of an hour or 6 minutes, not 5.5 hours. There were other references in this particular line, but it left an impression that I think is inappropriate. I would like that particular entry item. The bill's already been paid, by the way. I'd like that particular entry item. I'd like to have that clarified and broken down between anything generated, any cost generated in relationship to me versus everything else. I think it's appropriate to know what the commissioners are costing individually this district, and it's also important to know when those costs are initiated by the commissioner as opposed to initiated by legal counsel to serve the district. So I would like to, I'm going to approve the expenditures, but I would like to have counsel, and I'm requesting the board to approve that, have counsel bring back clarification of that one item that references an email with me and break it down as to what was the expense related to me so that we're not overpaying.
Mr. President,
Yes.
in my review of the bills and claims, that was one of the items I found to have a problem. We recently discussed not going to council and creating bills based on controversy that we had previously. And we made the decision that anything like that would go through this commission before we would entertain a bill. I saw that in going through the council's bill, legal counsel's bill, that there was an attributing number of $1,000 some odd, and it had Commissioner William Holsinger's name on it. I sent him an email and asked him for clarification. He told me that he had no knowledge of that. At best, he might have spent a couple of minutes. I instructed staff, our finance officer, to send
Please finish, Commissioner.
to send a letter to the attorney asking for a complete breakdown of what they think is the $1,000 attributed to Commissioner Holsinger. And we would get that, I think, in the report.
Okay.
I
Ms.
did,
Larson.
the day that you asked, I did draft a letter to Jean and sent it to her, and she said she's working on it, and I haven't heard a response.
I have a question.
Is it related to this? or
Yes, it
something
is.
else?
It
Okay.
is. I don't understand how it's appropriate for Commissioner Tucker to make that request without it coming through the board, because that's going to cost legal time for them to respond to this letter that was sent. And we agreed that this board would vote on all requests from the board for legal counsel time, billable hours. And so here we are violating that new policy, and I'm concerned about the fact that that's happening. And I believe it was Commissioner Tucker, or was it Holsinger, who put that policy in place in the first place. So this is inconsistent. I want to see the unredacted billing myself. I don't know what the heck they're talking about, but I want to see it. And I'm a little put off that I have to drive to council's office every time I want to look at the unredacted billing. So we need to figure out, or maybe I can come to you.
I have the same thing they have.
You have the unredacted billing, so I can, because if I go to council's office, then again, I'm in the same
Yes,
position.
understood.
So I can't do it. So, if I know that I can come to you, great. But, is that really required? Like, couldn't you guys just email me the document so that I can look at it without having
Yeah,
to
you just
drive?
have to give your request to Peter, and then he tells me what to do.
So can I just say right now that, I'd like to be able to have that document so that I
To
can read
resolve
it.
that right now, just to get back on topic, but to finish up your item, I think that, as commissioners, as commissioners, you have the right to ask to see those redacted, unredacted billings
And I have seen them before,
Right.
but I was only
from staff.
allowed to see at council's office.
No, you have the permission now, I believe. We've just had this discussion, so
Okay.
yes. you
And
should be able to.
I really think we need to, there need to be some repercussions, because Commissioner Tucker isn't following our policy. And, I'm not okay with that. So this is something that I'm really upset about.
Before I have Commissioner Tucker respond to that, I think that the reason why he did it is because he's the treasurer, and it's something that he noticed, and he brought it to the attention of Commissioner Holsinger and then legal. But Commissioner Tucker, do you want to say anything
Well,
on this?
you eloquently expressed my opinion. For me, in order to do my due diligence, I must go in there and look at the bills, find things that I think are inaccurate or not correct or not consistent, and follow those through. That's the job of a treasurer. That's my fiduciary responsibility. I think my colleague, my new colleague, just needs to bone up on what's good and what's bad and stop trying to shoot shots at people, because that gets you no place. As treasurer, if you'll recall, Mr. President, when you were treasurer, you brought the whole idea of billings to the attorneys to our attention, and we acted on that. As the treasurer, Ms. Garza responds to me and does my wishes and my bidding, if you will, as treasurer. And that's why we have separately elected treasurer. And God willing, one day somebody else on this commission will be treasurer, and they'll understand how that goes. And that's the fiduciary responsibility I have. And I back up not at all from that.
But
I have a
question-
comment.
I'll yield to colleague.
Actually, why don't we have Mr. Reese, and then I have a quick
I
question.
think I can maybe, hopefully, put this to bed.
Please.
I know I'm pretty confident I speak for Jean, certainly for me, I don't bill the district for time spent on actually billing the district. So if there's a question about the bills, or if something in the bills needs to be spelled out differently, I don't see that as a legal services charge. I just view that as an administrative cost, and that's not actually billed.
And you eat that cost, basically.
Yeah,
You eat
that's
that
right.
administrative
I have a
cost.
question for Kai. In the past, Jean actually has billed us for billing requests for information. For example, when Commissioner Bernardo asked for a breakdown of costs per commissioner on what our billings were, she charged us for that.
Well, that's different in the sense that you're asking for us to create new documents for you. Now, if there's a question with what a cost on an actual invoice was, that's something we can clarify without
But
charging
you
for
haven't
that
done
time.
it yet, right? You haven't responded to the letter yet, have you?
I know that Jean is doing the response and plans to have it out by the end of this week.
Is that going to be like a memo, or how are we going to be receiving that?
I don't know for sure. I think she just plans to send a new invoice with greater detail on the charge.
So, and you're 100% sure there'll be no fees for that
I
whatsoever?
can guarantee you there will be
Okay.
no charge.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for explaining that. But back to Commissioner Holsinger's, Tucker's point. I do recall Jean billing us for billing-related questions in the past, so I think it's a very legitimate question to ask. And as far as policy goes, following policy when it's convenient and not consistent is not acceptable for me. And, I'm concerned that that's what happened here. That this noticing of there being a problem with the billings for council should have been brought to the board. I want to know if there is a problem with our billings from our council. I want to know about it. It's very important to me that it be addressed in public at a board meeting. This is serious. And also, this business about the pile of checks, this is another example of conveniently not bringing it to the board's attention. Our treasurer should have brought that to the board's attention. Having these, private meetings or whatever is going on, I don't know. I don't like it, and it needs to be done in public. This has got to stop. That's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
I would like to just to finish up this item with regards to, what to bring to the board and what not to bring to the board. I know that we all agreed to, whenever there's legal costs involved, to bring it to the full board. So if I can ask this from my colleagues, how about if this situation or a similar situation arises like this again, can you please, and you did, Commissioner Tucker, you did bring it up tonight, that's why it became a discussion item, to bring it to the full board, and then we can direct staff, we can direct legal to do whatever, but just continue to bring it to the full board. Instead of, if I could just remind everyone to do that.
Call the question.
Well, let me just respond to that just for a moment.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
Unless the commission by motion directs me to do so, I'm not going to do so. I come in twice a month and I review each and every bill that has been paid. And if I find irregularities, I call upon staff or whomever I need to call upon to rectify the situation. I'm not going to run back here to the commission with every little dot that's not pointed or T that's not crossed, unless this commission by majority rule tells me to do so. And Commissioner Brennan, can do whatever she wishes to do about responding. She can certainly do like I do and go to all the bills and look through them one by one. But I don't respond to her, I respond to this commission, and I was elected as treasurer by a vote. And as I recall, it was a majority vote, that's why I'm treasurer.
Excuse me.
And that's all I'm going to
Fair
go
enough,
for.
thank you, fair enough.
That means that I have to do his work. I have to now go up to the office every month and do exactly what he is responsible for doing. He wanted to be the treasurer, and he is supposed to bring any problems or irregularities back to the board so that
Not true.
Okay. Commissioner Brennan, I'm going to
Not true.
close down. I'm going to basically, we're gonna vote on this item, but regarding your point, It is incumbent upon every person who becomes treasurer. It was incumbent upon me. It's incumbent upon Commissioner Tucker. Whoever is treasurer is ultimately responsible. I mean, we're all responsible, but the treasurer is even more responsible for noticing any type of irregularities and bringing it to the full board's attention, which I believe Commissioner Tucker did tonight. He did bring it. And Commissioner Holsinger and Commissioner Tucker both discussed it tonight. So it was brought to light, and I just want to say that, you know, I will not, having been a former treasurer, I will not usurp or try to micromanage the treasurer of the board. I won't do that. But I understand your point about we just have to make sure that we are...
We have a transparency problem. I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay. Thank you. So for this item, there was a motion and a second. There was a motion and a second. I'm sorry. Who was the motion and the second was? You were the second. Okay, roll call please.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Carolina?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Okay, so we are now at item number 7, General Manager's Report.
You have my report. I'll take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions on the General Manager's Report?
I have questions when it's my turn.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan, please go ahead.
I don't understand why in this report the board wasn't alerted to the fact that checks were missing back in July of 2013 and why this wasn't disclosed until September 18th for me via the president of the board in a phone call, not by the treasurer, not by the general manager. And I think that this should have been put on the agenda, but at the very least, it should have been mentioned during the general manager's report to the board. I am very concerned. I think we have a big transparency problem, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And I'm going to keep moving here. I know I got a letter, I think we all did, regarding concerns that a public member had about the work being done at the restroom at Pillar Point Harbor. And I know it mentions here under Pillar Point Harbor that the west restroom renovation is near complete. So I'm wondering if we could have a date, an estimated date by which it's complete, and a little more information about the delays, because it seems that our liveaboard tenants have been using a portalet for a long time and they're not comfortable with it. So I'm wondering if we could get more information about that, and I'm going to keep going, and then if General Manager Brunel wants to chime in, great. On page 2, as I've mentioned before, the problem with West Shoreline Access Trail, which is referenced here at the bottom of page 2, it says here that the district has provided the site condition survey and will provide information regarding an immediate quick fix for the most seriously eroded location for which the Coastal Commission may consider authorizing an emergency permit or similar approval. I'd like to point out that the problem with the trail eroding has been the case for like 10 years. So it's not as if this is a new problem. This problem has been getting steadily worse, but we've had part of the trail eroded away to nothing for many, many years now, and nothing has been done about it. This is a public safety hazard. We have many, many members of the public accessing this trail to get out to check out the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve and the Maverick Surf Break, and it's a popular beach. We really do need to move on doing something about this, so I'm glad to see the conversations happening, but I think to describe it in emergency terms or quick fix terms is sort of, you know, not dealing with the fact that this has been a known problem for a really long time. So we should have a plan in place already for doing this, and we really need to, you know, get it going. And as far as this business about the district will proceed with regular permit process for the full project, this will include consideration of various alternatives related to hard edge armoring or soft edge, no armoring, possible combinations, feasibility of uses, subtle harbor sediments, suitable harbor.
Is she asking a question or is she making a speech?
This is not a time for the
Excuse me,
public to comment.
Excuse me, please don't interrupt the commissioner when the commissioner is speaking.
So we've heard a lot from the public about interest in soft edge solutions. You know, I'm glad to see this mentioned here, but we haven't started on that. Nothing has been done. So we're a long ways out from moving this forward, and I would just, you know, hope that we get more information quickly. That's kind of my point there. On to page 3, community and public education. We were not told, well, I was not told tonight that PCT would not be here at the beginning of the meeting. I was told, in fact, I read that we were going to have PCT here tonight. Apparently, they didn't know about the new start time of 6 p.m. for our Harbor District meetings, which for everybody watching on television, all of the Harbor District meetings are now going to start at 6 p.m. We haven't done good public outreach regarding this change, and I'm concerned about that. You know, we didn't even bother to contact our video provider to let them know about the change, and I would hope that that wouldn't happen in the future, that they'd be given fair warning about what the status of their contract is, that sort of thing.
Point of order, Mr. President.
I would like to know.
This is an item that is not on the report.
It is on the report.
Please, tell me where.
We've got audio recording system in place, alternative audio recording.
Page 3.
Yeah, page 3, community and public education.
All right.
Commissioner meetings will continue to be video recorded by PCT until.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Brennan, please continue.
So what I want to know is, what date is PCT no longer going to be videotaping the meetings, because the public needs to know, and it's been unclear. So that's a question. On page 5, let's see. It says here, midway down the page, on September 11th, the City Council of South San Francisco adopted a resolution approving Harbor District's capital improvement management plan for Oyster Point Marina pursuant to the agreement between the city and the district and the successor agency to the city's redevelopment agency. The successor agency has listed a $2 million payment to the Harbor District as a pending obligation. This has been mentioned before, but I would love to have more explanation on it. So if not tonight, maybe at a future meeting, because I'm not totally clear about how these redevelopment funds are getting reallocated to the Harbor District, and I think we should, I'm wondering if that's being planned into the next budget, or, you know, if this is coming up as a surprise, or how we're finding out about that. I'd just like a lot more information there. And then I'm going to keep moving. We've got free Wi-Fi at district harbors. I don't know why that word free keeps showing up, because I think it really would be more appropriate to say Wi-Fi at district harbors. But anyway, it says here, you know, that we, at the August 21st meeting, directed staff to seek further information. Sounds like we're going to get something back soon. Did we decide on a date earlier?
You did, but I was gonna mention to you that I'm not gonna be here at the next meeting. I'd prefer to get the report myself, so I would prefer it to be the first of November meeting.
So the first meeting in November?
Because otherwise that would only give me 3 days to work on the report.
Okay, thank you for providing a date. I really appreciate that. And page 6, website improvements. Staff continues to compile and provide information on website use and content to the district's website manager, who is in process of updating the website layout and facilitating a more user-friendly use. So I think this project started before I got on the board, which would mean, you know, back in 2012. And I'm wondering if we've got any closer to having a date by which we're going to be wrapping this up, and how much cost are we in for? I mean, you know, it's taken a long time. I don't know if anything's actively happening.
At this point, the website person is waiting on staff, and since staff had 4 openings, we kind of pushed that to the back burner so that I could hire staff. I've been able to hire 3, I'm still working on a 4th, so that's been my priority.
So do you think we'll be seeing something in a couple months, a month?
I would
or
say a couple months.
2 months. Thanks for giving a vague date, I appreciate that. So then there's business about persons who submit PRA requests should be invited to schedule a visit to the Harbor District Administrative Office at regular office hours, and it goes on to say there would be a cost of 25 cents per page for printing. That seems really steep. However, you know, it does mention here that electronic copies for documents will be provided if available at no cost. And I just wanted to, you know, stress that I think in this digital age, you know, people should not be paying 25 cents per page for information when a digital file is available, or if it's not available, it really should be available. And then we get into this, there's something here about redacted. Let me look at this. The last sentence on the last paragraph is on page 7. It says the district will exercise its discretion regarding such exemptions on a case-by-case basis, and it cites the California Attorney General's office, some notes. This paragraph doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so maybe if this comes back in the next general manager's report, there could be some further clarification about what that paragraph is trying to say, because it's unclear to me. Almost done, almost done. Then we've got 2 pages of stacks of ring binders, pictures of stacks of ring binders. And what in the world are these supposed to convey? This is bizarre, and I don't understand why we've got, I mean, if anybody would like me to photograph stacks of ring binders at my office, I could, but I wouldn't want to bore you guys with those at a board meeting. So I'm not sure what that's about, and I don't think it's appropriate to include photos of stacks of ring binders in our board packet. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. President, I'll respond to her questions so that she can have the information she wants.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grinnell.
Thank you. Yes, it's now 9:43, so I'll go as quickly as possible.
I'm sorry, what time do you have?
9:43.
9:43.
That's what I have to. Thank you. I thought you said 20. Thank you.
Okay, I am from the top. Why the board is not alerted to the missing checks. That's quite simple. Number one, there were potential personnel issues involved that are confidential. And until the whole thing was sorted out, we had to determine what's going on with that. Secondly, there are privacy issues relating to certain of the bills. And so effectively, what's been going on, once it was discovered, and Ms. Galarza can comment on that at her report, we have been doing an immediate, intensive internal evaluation of the situation, and that is absolutely not to be brought into the public realm until we're completely satisfied that the review has covered all the necessary bases, and we've determined exactly what can be brought forward. And so people just have to wait until that process is done. Next item, the liverboard information, I missed that. I was involved with something, so if there's something you want from me, if you could repeat that.
Is that related to the restroom renovation?
Oh, restroom.
And portalets or something like that?
You sent us a letter from it came from the Harbor District, from a concerned tenant who is a liveaboard person who was unable to access the restroom and was using a portalette and wanted to
Okay.
know when the delays were going to be.
All right, I'll defer to Harbor Master Grindy. He can respond to that.
I'll try to make it as quick as I can. The letter came from a tenant who had left after he sold his boat. Last meeting, though I didn't get to speak about it, I did leave at everybody's desk what the timeline was for that project after the change order occurred. Just to kind of bring it to closure, just in case we don't get there, is the showers are now open. The toilets and other things are almost all installed. They're working on the toilet seats and the flushometer connections behind the wall. I anticipate, I hope, fingers crossed, toes crossed, that they'll be done by Friday or about midweek next week. It's just really, it's a plumber, that we're waiting on to get all the stuff done, and some parts we're missing. That's pretty much the status of that restroom.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
And I should say that they are ahead of schedule from what, if you looked at the schedule I provided,
Thank you.
that was supposed to be completed by October 31st, so we're actually, 2.5 weeks ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Grinnell,
Okay,
please
next,
continue.
West Shoreline Trail. The fact of the matter is, we do have a plan. The document that was sent off to the Coastal Commission staff has 3 alternative solutions to the entire trail issue. They have 3 different cost estimates attached and different physical treatments. We have made that available to the Coastal Commission staff. We had already a conference call with them. We had expected to have a meeting with them. Unfortunately, one of the senior staffer was called away, and so they had to postpone that. We'll be meeting with them later this month. So we're proceeding with the permit process. They've agreed, at least informally at this point, to proceed on the basis of a concurrent 2-phase approach. The first approach would be what we call a quick fix to immediately address the relatively small area that's most severely affected by the erosion, and we may even get an emergency permit approval for that, so we can move very quickly. Concurrently, we will go through the full permit process for the entire project, which will include the entire trail, and then a final phase of the new restroom and parking lot improvements. So we're moving ahead on this. We have money budgeted for this year, and the project is proceeding. As far as the video situation, I will defer to Ms. Harris as to when the final transfer to the non-video recording we have, as we've done tonight, will go on. That will, of course, be made available publicly each time. And the important element of that is it will have the complete recording of each proceeding, which means there will be no need to spend hours and lots of time and money correcting and editing minutes. So there's that. Next item, the $2 million, the redevelopment thing. Very quickly, what has happened is that
Wait a minute, did you say a date for the video, when video is being turned
No,
down?
I didn't. It's imminent. Ms. Harris, if you have...
Approximate date?
I don't have an approximate date, actually. I'm hoping that it will be by the next meeting, but that'll depend on how this recording went. And I do apologize on behalf of the administration staff that PCT was not notified of the meeting time. We had, a change obviously in personnel last week, and between last week and this week, and so in the confusion.
Thank you.
So you're doing a podcast test tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You made a mistake.
Okay.
I apologize.
Forgiven. Mr.
All right,
Grinnell,
moving
please
on,
continue.
in the interest of time. When the state government eliminated redevelopment agencies, entities called successor agencies were created in all the counties. And so cities that had redevelopment agencies have sent various contracts and other legal agreements that would bind them to release various funds. These things have been sent to the various successor agencies seeking approval to release those funds. Now, the Harbor District has a memorandum of understanding dating March 25th, 2011 with the city of South San Francisco, within which the city is bound to return $2 million to the Harbor District based on certain conditions. In fact, we testified in front of the city council recently going over edits to our capital improvement program, which was a condition of the city's giving us the $2 million. The city council approved everything unanimously, and it's being sent off to the successor agency. We're told that the $2 million could be expected sometime, we're estimating, the latter half of this fiscal year. That means somewhere between January and June, probably closer to June. So that's what that's about. What? It's basically the equivalent of reimbursement for docks, yes. We have completed rebuilding Dock 11 and Dock 8, which is the guest dock. That's what the money is for at Oyster Point, which means it could be rolled over and spent on another dock or two. Free Wi-Fi, there's been talked about, website improvements been talked about, the PRA requests, basically.
Yeah, the question is, why did you, I'm sorry, Mr. Grinnell, the question is on page 7, why was that paragraph added to the report? Is there something really significant about that paragraph?
Which paragraph?
It's on page 7 of your report, last page. It's above other items. It's that paragraph that says the PRA provides for blah, blah, blah. It's
yes.
Like real legalese stuff.
Yes. And,
is there a reason for that you wanted to
and so there's some confusion as to what it means?
No, it's just, was there a reason why you wanted to call attention to that? Why did you put that in your report? Is that really significant?
Yes, because that refers to things that could be redacted. The second sentence refers to them explicitly. That comes out of the Attorney General and the PRA itself.
So it was for redaction clarification? Basically.
Correct.
Got it.
As for the photographs, which are absolutely important for this board to understand the level of effort that is involved in responding to certain Public Records Act requests. What you see, it's the same thing taken from two different angles. That's 2 PRA requests given to us in 1 week. We have to provide all the information that's in there according to that PRA request. Now, fortunately, the maker of that request, at our suggestion and invitation, is willing to come into the office and take a look. And the essential utility of that is to save that person time and money in dealing with all of this. It saves us time and money going through it. And we are very clear in our understanding that we are bound by law, by the PRA, to respond to these requests. We've conferred with counsel about it. And only in the specific instances where there is a legitimate, justifiable basis for redacting certain information, which is why I put that paragraph in there to give you a sense of what's possible. Other than that, we have to comply. You need to understand that all of this is a major impact on staff time. When we're dealing with these things, we're not dealing with anything else.
Point well taken.
Okay, and I just want you to keep that in mind. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Grinnell. We are, I believe there aren't any more questions. We have 5 minutes to go into Director of Finance, HR, and Operations by Mr. Grindy. So,
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd just say, whatever it is we don't get through here tonight,
yes.
I'd like to make it the first thing on the agenda, even before general public comment for next week, because it's been 2 weeks, been 2 meetings now, and we've had no
That's a
report.
good point, okay. I would be open to that, commissioners.
Let's
Would
let
that
them
be-
plow through, maybe we can get out of here. and get this done.
Okay, well,
Okay, so you have my report, I'll take any questions.
So I have questions.
Commissioner Brady?
No.
She has a
You
speech.
mentioned earlier that it would be more appropriate to ask about the actuals versus budget statements, financial reports on capital projects, and current balance sheets that we haven't been provided in our board packets since I've been on the board, and I don't think have ever been provided in any board packets in the history of the Harbor District during this item 8. I would urge the board to make this a priority, that we are looking at this information in our packets. We need to improve transparency. I realize that this is going to create additional work for our Director of Finance. However, we did just hire or approve hiring somebody, and,
That was my replacement.
okay, so we have.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
please finish and then we'll
Yeah.
have a response, because we have
We're done.
2 minutes, 3
Okay.
minutes.
And then the other point is just that, again, I really don't think we should be including photos of ring binders in our board packets, but that's just how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so
Do you want to
real
respond
quick.
to actuals versus?
Okay, so as far as I've been here 9 years, and when I worked for the city of Millbrae, it never happens. Governments have an annual financial report, which means it happens at the end of the year. So, you know, in July, we get the final budget, in October, we get a quarterly investment report, November, prior year's financials, January, a quarterly investment report, January, a mid-year budget review, and then we have the finance priorities workshop, and then we have a quarterly report in April, the same in July, and then we have our next budget in July. So if you want additional work, you know, then, you know, you guys can discuss what you're looking for. Preparing financials does not make sense.
Why?
I
Just
think,
if you could just.
well, because you have to close your books and run it, and it's,
Just to educate me here.
okay, so one of the reasons is, you know, an income statement shows revenue and expenses. So if you look like January to December, I'm gonna use a calendar year, the only time we get our big buck revenue is April and December. So every other 10 months of the year, we're gonna show this huge loss. It's pointless. It doesn't tell you anything.
Because of the seasonality is what you're saying.
The seasonality of the, and also, you know, when you have big capital budgets, drawing down your, you know, expenses, then, you know, it's just, you know, so I don't know, you know, there's, you
Thank
know,
you for
I'll
that.
do whatever you guys want me to do. I really don't wanna do a balance sheet, because that's, you know, your quarterly investment report is your balance sheet, and you get that 4 times a year, so you know how much cash we have. Your mid-year budget reviews tells us where we're at. At the finance priorities workshop, we talk again where we're at. So, you know, I am open for suggestions, would love to give you as much information as you want, but, you know, some of it doesn't make sense. We're not a small business that generates monthly reports for our stockholders.
Well, thank you for being transparent, open, and
Yeah.
and educational too, because
Yeah.
I learned something about the seasonality issue. We have 1 minute. Any other questions on this? I don't think we're gonna have time for HR or operations, so.
Oh, I guess I just wanted to comment on the picture, you know. Just so you know, I just took that, I said to Peter, because he was wondering where things were, like, you know, where's this that I asked you for? And I said, oh, I'm pulling this PRA request together. And not only do I have to find all this, then I have to, you know, redact some information because there's certain information in the bank reconciliations you can't see. And even alone, I'm so glad that the member of the public said he'd come in. But even alone, today, it took me the entire day to pull out what is personal to the district.
Which, Mr. President, in the last 30 seconds, tells me that we are fast approaching having to hire an individual who just deal with PRAs.
Where I work, there are 2. It can take a while. So, understood. So, we are at 10 o'clock. We're at the end. So, can we agree that HR and operations will be the very beginning of the next meeting?
Oh, we should have let you go first, you're not gonna be here.
Send us a postcard.
I will.
Send us.
So, is that an agreement, though, that at the next meeting, we're going to start with HR and operations? Yes. We've skipped them for...
Well, shouldn't uncovered business always come to the next agenda? I mean, isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Old business will move to the next agenda?
There is no old business.
Well, we should have old business. Let's add an old business item to the agenda, because we're going to need it.
Okay, if that's the, we're at 10 o'clock, but is that the pleasure of the board at this point? I'm not hearing it.
I think it would make sense, because where else do we put it?
Do you think we should?
These are reports, it's not old business.
Okay.
So
I'm
we're
not hearing
only
the
going to
support,
cover, so we're only going to cover it once then at the meeting, at the next meeting? I just want to understand
We're
this.
going to cover what one, sorry.
We're going to do the report for this meeting,
And then we're going to start the agenda for the next meeting, the way we normally do.
and then we'll get the reports again, but for the current information.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct.
Thank
But
you.
just so that we don't skip over this. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Well, you already adjourned, because what do you want to what?
Okay, do I hear a motion to
Make
adjourn?
a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we have absent, one absent on the vote. Okay, we are adjourned at 10:02.